I get asked a lot where I find the topics that I commonplace about, or where do I get my ideas? And the simple answer is that I read a lot. The majority of my topics come from books, but also academic journals too. And for the academic journals, I find them online. I use a paid service, but I know there are some that are free too, like Google Scholar is free. You can search academic journals by topic, so there are free options out there. But for the books portion, like where do I find what books to read? The short answer is that I follow the trail of my books. I don't like to rely solely on what the algorithm is showing me, and so this is my way of not solely relying on an algorithm to show me what to read. Although it is a great place to start, I'm not knocking finding recommendations online because that's exactly how this whole chain of events started. So it started, I saw a bunch of reviews for Upstream by Mary Oliver, and I had heard of Mary Oliver, but I had never read her books when this came out. So this was years ago when I saw people talking about this, and I said, you know what, let me try reading this book. And it turns out I loved it. It was 5 stars for me, easily one of my favorites. And then I realized I loved Mary Oliver's work so much that I wanted to read her poetry instead of just essays. And so I picked up Devotions by Mary Oliver. I love this one as well. Maybe not as much as Upstream, but I did really love this. Mary Oliver has such a beautiful voice, especially when it comes to nature and just being a human. She's got a wonderful perspective. And so I wanted to learn more about how she wrote, and I realized that she came out with a book called A Poetry Handbook. And so I read this because I wanted to learn more about her process and how I could learn to write more like her. And so that was the reason why I picked this book up. But then I wondered if there were other books out there that were similar to this, kind of like a guidebook on poetry, and I found this book. I had never read the author before, Ted Kooser, and so I picked it up. Well, actually, before I bought it, I picked up another book of his because I wanted to make sure that I actually enjoyed his poetry before reading his advice for poetry. So I ended up picking up Kindness Regards, and I ended up loving it, and so I decided to read this one, and so that's how I got to this. But in this book, he has a poem from Jane Kenyon, and he dissects how that poem works, but it is such a beautiful poem that has stuck with me for years. And it's called In the Nursing Home. And so I loved it so much that I wanted to pick up more from that author. And so that's how I got to this book. So this book contained the poem that I really loved in here. And so that's how I got here. And from here, I realized that this book was published after her death. And it was actually her husband who compiled this book of poetry, I believe. And I think I mentioned briefly that the husband is also a poet, so I was curious. I wonder what his work is like. If I loved her work so much, then maybe I'll like his work as well. And so I picked up her husband's work. And then I realized that he was a poet laureate of the United States, and it made me realize how few poet laureates that I knew. And so then I got to searching up other poet laureates of the United States. And then that led me to Ada Limon. And so you can see this trail here very loosely connecting things to each other, whether it's directly mentioned in a book like these, or it's just a topic that was the same like these as well. So that is how I find new books. It's an endless chain of events of something that I was curious about, basically. And another way to do this is if you find an author you really love, search what authors they love, because authors usually are vocal about the authors that they love. So search for your author's favorite authors, your author's favorite books, read those ones, and then read those authors' favorite authors. It's a never-ending cycle. And that's my personal favorite way to find new reads. And so this way, you're not relying on the algorithm, rather following the trail of your books. And the topics that I find, they come from these books that I read. If you're struggling to come up with topics or things to write, I suggest reading more, because you never run out of things to write when you're constantly filling up your own well with writing. I think it was Ray Bradbury who had a quote, something about he never runs out of things to write because he's constantly consuming other books, other mediums, other works, and so as long as you're filling that well, you won't run out of things to write. So if you're struggling to output, perhaps you need to work on the input part. That way you have something to draw from. So those are my tips. Hopefully that was helpful. And now for the journal with me part of this video. I'll be doing 2 entries in my Commonplace book. For these entries, I was feeling that my stickers were a little stale, and I wanted to do something a little different with the layout of my 2 entries here and the stickers, the way that I designed them. Sometimes I just need to mix things up a little bit to get my creative juices flowing again, because if I do the same thing over and over again, that repetition kind of loses its magic, its creativity. So I'm always trying to find little ways to spruce up either my layouts or my stickers. So basically, I'm always just trying to find ways to do new things to keep it fresh and exciting. And the thing that I'm doing different in this spread is this sticker here that I'm placing. It's this big blue section. I wanted it to feel like it came from a newspaper or a magazine. So it has this title and it has dividing lines, the image with the cut line, and that paragraph there. I definitely was inspired by layouts from a magazine. And I do love to find inspiration from magazines because I feel like journaling and magazines and newspapers, they overlap in that you're trying to communicate words and also using imagery, or at least I use imagery. But the whole point is to communicate, and with journaling, you're communicating with yourself, but with magazines and newspapers, you're communicating with the world. So if you ever find that you're light on inspiration, check out some magazines, some newspapers, and see what they're doing in those. And as for the sticker design, I used a few pieces of art. So I used the left image, the sandcastle one. It's called Building a Sandcastle. It's by Jesse Wilcox Smith. And then the wave one, everyone knows that one. It's the Great Wave off Kanagawa. It's a Japanese ukiyo-e woodblock print by Katsushika Hokusai. I think it's one of the most famous ukiyo-e woodblock prints. And I actually recently got a book on other woodblock prints of the time period because I didn't really know many of them. I've only seen a few, especially when I learned about them in my art history classes. So I bought a book, that way I can dive in further on my own. And that last image, I don't believe I have the artist information. I think I may have gotten that art from Century Library, so I don't have the specific artist name for it. But okay, as for the entry itself, this entry is about creativity, and all of the quotes come from the book Bird by Anne Lamott. I actually read the book years ago, but I was reminded of it recently and I realized I don't have a single entry in my Commonplace book about this book. And it's one that comes to mind for me quite frequently, so I figured I would do an actual entry on it. And here are the few quotes that I wrote down from the book. You are lucky to be one of those people who wishes to build sandcastles with words, who is willing to create a place where your imagination can wander. We build this place with the sand of memories. These castles are our memories and inventiveness made tangible. So part of us believes that when the tide starts coming in, we won't really have lost anything, because actually only a symbol of it was there in the sand. Another part of us thinks we'll figure out a way to divert the ocean. This is what separates artists from ordinary people. The belief deep in our hearts that if we build our castles well enough, somehow the ocean won't wash them away. I think this is a wonderful kind of person to be. And that one is my favorite one, but I'll read you the other two that I also wrote down. You get your intuition back when you make space for it, when you stop the chattering of the rational mind. The rational mind doesn't nourish you. You assume that it gives you the truth because the rational mind is the golden calf that this culture worships. But this is not true. Rationality squeezes out much that is rich and juicy and fascinating. And here's the last quote from this entry. If something inside you is real, we will probably find it interesting, and it will probably be universal. So you must risk placing real emotion at the center of your work, right straight into the emotional center of things, right toward vulnerability. Don't worry about appearing sentimental. Worry about being unavailable. Worry about being absent or fraudulent. Risk being unliked. Tell the truth as you understand it. And that was all from the first spread. Now we're moving on to the second one, and this one is about astronauts, with the Artemis 2 launch and return, and also the movie Project Hail Mary, which I saw and loved, by the way. I feel like we've been seeing a lot more space content, or at least I have, in the journaling community, because everyone is journaling about it. There's this collective effervescence about this whole experience. It's bringing unity and hope, and I love that we're all journaling about it. I did write about the Artemis 2 mission in my personal journal, but in this entry I'm specifically focusing on astronauts afterwards. That's what my title is there, but it's the overview effect basically. It's how when you go to space and you see the Earth from afar and you see the moon, how that changes you fundamentally as a person. and that all astronauts experience this effect where you kind of become a humanitarian after experiencing that, and it was coined the overview effect. You see how small this blue rock is in infinite space and how small every single human individual is on this blue rock. I can imagine it makes you realize how fragile the Earth is, how fragile humans are, and it makes it all the more precious. And I'll read you the quotes from this entry, but first I'll show you a little trick that I've shown on TikTok before. When I do highlighter lines and I want to get a straight line at the end, and also I don't want the ink to be darker at the end. You know how highlighters, the ink pulls at the end, it just gets a little darker at the very end of your line. Well, this post-it note trick basically helps with that. You place the sticky note right where you want your line to end, and then you can go over the sticky note when you're ending your line, and then you peel the sticky note off, and then you have a straight line that doesn't have darker ink at the end of it. Okay, now for the quotes in the entry. These quotes come from the book Madness, Rack and Honey by Mary Ruefle, and no surprise there, I'm constantly quoting that book. In the book, there's only a brief section about this idea, but she is summarizing what astronauts said after coming back from space, and she actually has a lot of quotes from many different astronauts, but in this entry, I only have my favorite 2 written down. The first one is Alan Bean from Apollo 12, and he said, "Every artist has the earth or their imaginations to inspire their paintings. I've got the earth and my imagination, and I'm the first to have the moon too. Certainly riding a rocket to the moon is the biggest kick you can have, but when I paint, I get the same feeling that I got when I flew in space. Well, certainly the view isn't as good, but the best part of life is internal." And in the book Mary Ruefle, she notes that Mr. Bean is a full-time painter. All he paints are pictures of the moon, and I love that. And the second quote, or the second astronaut, is Edgar Mitchell from Apollo 14, and he said, "For me, it was the beginning of unitary thinking. To think that the molecules of my body were manufactured in the same furnace as those stars and those galaxies billions of years ago. We went up there as space technicians, and we came back humanitarians. Looking at Earth is an instant global consciousness." And Mary Ruefle noted, Mitchell left NASA a year after his return and founded the Institute of Noetic Sciences in Northern California, an institution devoted to the study of consciousness and of how we fit into the universe. In 1994, the institution had 40,000 members. It's interesting to see how the paths of these astronauts changed and how their lives changed after they came back to Earth. And I think earlier in the video I did say that all astronauts experience the overview effect, but that's not true, and actually Mary Ruefle notes specifically Neil Armstrong. This is what she said about him. "There are no comments by Mr. Armstrong. He lives reclusively in Ohio and does not attend conferences, reunions, celebrations, parades, anniversaries, press events. He does not answer mail from strangers, answer the telephone, open the door. He was, however, many years ago asked how he felt knowing his footprints might remain undisturbed on the lunar surface for centuries. I hope somebody goes up there someday and cleans them up." That's what he said. So yes, not every astronaut experiences the overview effect, but it is a very common effect for astronauts. So that's this week's video, and thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you being here.